Every successful man and woman in this kingdom are men and women who are privileged carriers of God's presence. Every successful men and women in this kingdom are men and women who are privileged carriers of God's presence. All successful men and women in this kingdom are men and women who are privileged carriers of God's presence. If you must be successful and move forward, if you must do exploits and experience expansion and dominion, you must be a carrier of God's presence. His presence is what that makes the difference. The presence of God is what that connotes victory. The presence of God is what that connotes expansion. God's presence is what that attracts speed and growth. His supernatural presence is what that provokes unusual favor in their life. So all successful men and women in this kingdom are men and women who are privileged carriers of God's blessing, of God's presence. His presence is the secret and the tools for speed and growth. No any great destiny or high flyers in this kingdom without the presence. No successful man or woman in this kingdom without his presence. No great destiny or high flyers in this kingdom without his presence, because all that God has to offer are embedded in his presence. All that God has to offer are embedded, are injected, are donated in his presence. Show me men that are doing exploits, then I'll tell you men that are carriers of God's praises. Everything God can give to a man, all that God can offer to a man, are injected and embedded in his praises. If you want to experience supernatural growth or experience unbeatable movements in this kingdom, you connect to his presence. Nothing makes you a candidate of victory or a candidate of dominion or a candidate of favor like the presence of God. Nothing makes you a candidate of victory. Nothing offers you victory or dominion or favor like the presence of God. His presence is what that brings a unique and enviable glory. In Daniel chapter 3 verse 24 and 25. Daniel 3 verse number 24 and 25. Then Nebuchadnezzar was astonished. He was very astonished. He was so surprised and rose up in a haste and spake and said unto his counselors, did not we cast 3 men burned into the midst of fire? That was a question, because what he saw in the fire made him to be so astonished. So he has to inquire from his men. He has to inquire from the counselors. Did we not cast 3 men burned? They were burned before they were thrown inside the fire. They answered and said unto the king, true, O king. In verse 25, he said, and he answered and said, lo, I see 4 men loosed. Number 1, they were 3 burned and thrown inside the fire. But he said to them, I see 4 men. The 4th man in fire came, which is Jehovah Jireh, the Almighty God, the beginning and the end from the beginning. The one who was, the one who is, the one who is to come. He came in the fire and was with them. He said, I see 4 men loose, they are no more bound, walking in the midst of fire, enjoying the presence of fire, walking with unusual liberation, walking with unusual liberty, walking with unusual victory. Their liberation was confirmed from God, walking in the midst of fire, and they have no hurt. When the 4 men came in, there was no hurt in their body.